Let's get to Beijing now. Another step closer to wine trade resuming. Realistically, though, Murray, how far is that off?
Well, we'd certainly be hoping that we can resume those exports to China as quickly as possible. Before the imposition of these tariffs, which occurred under the Morrison government, China was Australia's biggest export market for wine, and we've lost effectively $1 billion a year in wine exports as a result of those tariffs. So it's fantastic news that emerged over the weekend that China has agreed to review its tariffs. They have a 5-month period in which to do that, which is pretty similar to the period that they had to review tariffs for barley. So we would be certainly hopeful that at the very latest that this can be resolved at that point in time, and hopefully it can be resolved even more quickly than that.
Oh, so any chance of it being done before the Prime Minister's visit to Beijing?
I wouldn't want to commit to that kind of thing. It's obviously now in the hands of the Chinese government as to how quickly they move, but they have committed to review these tariffs within 5 months, which is, you saw the reaction from wine growers in Australia over the weekend. It's a huge relief. It's important that we do maintain diverse markets for wine and every other product in the future, and we've been working with the wine industry to help them do that. But there's no denying that China is a critical market for our wine industry, so it's nothing but good news.
Is that the last remaining major hurdle when it comes to us and China and trade?
No, there are two others in particular, Pete, which remain and which we've been advocating on for some time. The first is rock lobster, which again has been facing massive trade barriers, and also there are some beef processing established, so some abattoirs in Australia are currently not able to supply into China. Despite that, China is still our biggest market for beef exports, but we would like to see those trade barriers lifted on both lobster and beef, and we'll continue advocating for that.
Okay, and just finally, Murray, Yes campaigners have given a brutal assessment of the Voice result. Do you agree with the letter that the result was, in their words, appalling and mean-spirited, and that Australians committed a shameful act by voting against it?
Oh, Pete, I think you can understand that, particularly for First Nations leaders who've been fighting for this for well over a decade, that there's a lot of hurt and disappointment about the result of the referendum. We understand as a government that there were many reasons that people voted no. We've accepted the result, and what we want to do now is work with Indigenous people and all Australians about how we can close the gap. Despite the fact that this referendum went down resoundingly, I think that all Australians think that we need to close that gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Australia, and that's what we'll be focusing on now.
Okay. So aside from the Constitution, though, Murray, can a Voice advisory body still established?
Well, I guess that's something that we'll have to consider now. We're not rushing to judgment about what way forward we want to go. We do want to actually understand what the aspirations of Indigenous people are now in the wake of that referendum result, but also we need to have some more bipartisanship on display. The fundamental reason that we saw a no result and that people voted no was that we didn't have bipartisanship. So that's something that I think is really important going forward.